Welcome to another episode of The Generative Age. My name is Donovan. I'm here with our lovely guests, which we'll introduce in a moment, both Kevin and Sebastian. We're here at the Hamburg Summit, AWS Summit. It is buzzing outside. The floor is busy. Thousands of participants, incredible breakouts. Kevin, you had an incredible breakout earlier. So let me introduce my guest today. We have Kevin Barbian. He's the head of IT and the program owner of Retail of the Future at Mercedes-Benz. Welcome, Kevin. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Donovan. Pleasure to be with you here.
Sebastian from Deloitte is with us as well, and he's supporting Kevin at Mercedes-Benz. So good to have you with us, Sebastian. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So Kevin, can you tell us, what does the day in the life of Kevin look like at Mercedes-Benz?
Well, I would say no day looks like the other day. So that's, I think, the general premise. But if you try to find the commonalities, it's for sure we have some sort of a top management meeting in the morning, sometimes 7:30 in the morning, to check out either the daily or the weekly results. So where we are in our core market in Germany. And then it's either engaging into more business-centric discussions. So how can we improve our business capabilities? Or it's more on the technology side. So for example, operations, monitoring, how can we get better? How can we release better software in a shorter amount of time? So it's always a mix of these two core characteristics, of course, accompanied by all the typical things like how to improve support quality, how to improve operations in general.
Yeah. You make it sound so easy. But I'm sure it's a very complicated portfolio that you manage. And of course, we all love your products. And when you step into a Mercedes-Benz, you really feel the energy that comes from, I imagine, what you just described as a typical day at Mercedes-Benz. So really love what you guys do. But I really want to drill into a discussion slightly coming off the stage where you presented a platforming approach. And of course, on this podcast, we talk about AI, and over the last 2 years, we've seen the advancements of, from machine learning to generative AI. Now we just talk agentic on every platform. And you took a really interesting decision some time ago in your organization. I think you mentioned about 2021-ish, where you decided we need to put down a data platform. We need to break down some silos. We have to consolidate. We want to do things more efficiently. But you didn't necessarily have the 2026 outlook on agents and all of these things, right? Could you sort of walk me through, Kevin, in 2021, you're doing incredible things, and to the listenership, we're going to get there in a moment, and we're going to talk some use cases and some tangible value adds that you are achieving on the back of this. But it really started with a decision you took about 5 years ago. Can you sort of talk us through what that looked like for you, what you were pushing for, why you did it, and why you thought it would yield the value that it's currently rendering for you?
Yeah, so 2021, I was pretty new to my role back then, head of digital data and AI for the global customer services division. And the core shift that we discussed back then was going from cost-centric to value-centric. And it's pretty much comparable to what we have now with AI. Because back then, of course, if you take a pure cost view, in many cases, it can be very attractive to stay in the old-fashioned legacy on-prem world, because here everything is amortized, everything is well known, there is no transformational FE effect practically that you're facing. You can stay where you are for many of the workloads that you have. But we consciously decided that we don't want to go that way, but rather go for a value-centric approach and make sure all of our workloads, all our applications, all our data comes to one platform, one global after-sales platform, as we called it back then, based on AWS. As well, a conscious decision back then to see where do we have the greatest potentials to grow in the future. Of course, we weren't that much talking about AI in the sense we are talking today.
Sure, yeah.
Because back then, our understanding of AI was machine learning, pattern recognition. So rather coming from a data science perspective, data engineering perspective, than really from the perspective of enabling use cases like we talk today.
Yeah.
But this decision back then, value-centric decision, create one platform for all, is what helped us to scale over time, to grow over time, because step by step, we pretty much got to all sales and customer experience applications. So pretty much the complete sales and customer experience landscape of Mercedes-Benz is then on that platform.
Wow.
And we again scaled up to the data side. So creating one data mesh across all these workloads, all these domains, all these business areas. And that is what finally enabled us to get where we are today, that we have one foundation for our AI use cases for rapidly scaling AI in the organization of sales and customer experience.
Yeah. And I love this. And I want to pause here because I'm seeing a lot of market signals where customers are looking to build enterprise scale platforms, sort of what you've just described, but they're starting that journey now, or they've had part of this journey over time, but now they realize that in order to embrace the opportunity that AI presents itself and agents present as an opportunity, they can't do this without something more sort of embedded into the enterprise, right? Touching the people in the everyday fabric of the business. But you can't boil the ocean. Your organization is large. It's a corporate, I imagine, much like we are at Deloitte. Tell me how you started. Did you start with this platform in one segment of the business and scale over time? What did that look like for you to get to the point 5 years down the line where you're seeing enterprise scale on the back of this platform?
I'd say our approach is pretty similar,
Mm,
2021, to what we did now in terms of how do you convince core stakeholders in the organization that it makes sense to invest, that
mm,
it makes sense to believe in the story that you tell them. Yeah? And back then, we clearly pointed out a clear vision for this unified platform across the organization. Of course, not starting with complete Mercedes-Benz right
sure.
away, but rather clearly pointing out to the customer services area, which is a very crucial one because this is where customer retention, customer loyalty
Love
either
that.
gets won or gets lost. Yeah. And the more consistent your customer experience is in this retention phase, the higher, of course, the likelihood that you sell the next car as well to this customer. Yeah. So by creating a unified platform, we saw a lot of benefits. Accessibility of data, of course. Yeah. But the story that we told was not only in one specific benefit area, but rather having 8 core pillars. I won't touch all of them,
Mm,
but let me point out one or two of them.
mm,
So data, for sure, easy to understand for everybody. That when you know that a customer has been to the workshop and he calls the call center, that's definitely benefit because you know the context of why he's calling
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Most probably it's related to that workshop visit he had. Yeah. So accessibility of data is something that was crucial. And the second area, now a bit more from the technical perspective, speed. Speed matters. Speed
Mhm.
definitely matters. If we talk productivity,
All
if
you
we
need to
talk
do is get into
efficiency.
an AMG and you realize that speed really matters, right?
Absolutely. And we always wanted to be the AMG in the organization. We never tried to be this super carrier that can do everything at once,
Mm,
but we said we do a platform that allows every developer to get onboarded within 24 hours and to be fully productive within 48 hours.
wow.
So that was a clear promise to the tech side of our organization saying, hey, it's no longer this, you need to approve something, you need to apply for this or that. No, you are ready to work in 48 hours with full productivity and you are onboarded within 24 hours. That's a clear promise, yeah, that we made. And I
Wow.
said on the business value side, clear promises around accessibility of data and the benefits we get from that and many more areas. But this is how we convinced our stakeholders back then to invest into one platform.
Hmm.
And step by step, and that's then I think always the transformational aspect in the organization, force people as well to go on that platform because in every big corporate you will always have this situation that people believe in what they've built over time, so you need to convince them, and most of the people you will convince with good arguments, but sometimes you will need as well to enforce a policy.
Yeah.
Yeah? Every good platform does so at the end of the day to bring people there. And the same is true for I would say, where we are right now. Because when we started now with our current track of delivering AI use cases, high value AI use cases, um, there were two potential ways to go.
Mm,
Number one was be very careful, say, yeah, we do now the incremental way until we've understood everything in every detail, understand the processes where we could potentially apply AI, or we go the other way and say, okay, we clearly promise to our executive sponsors that we will deliver value. First big value use case after 4 weeks. And then every 2 weeks, there's a new AI use case that delivers value to the organization out there. Not something theoretical, not just a pure chatbot for internal use cases,
yeah.
but something that really delivers value for our customers at the end of the day and our sales reps out there that are serving our
Yeah.
customers.
Wow.
And this is how we got the buy-in. Yeah. So
Wow.
pretty similar, I would say ambitious approach, always limited to a specific area.
Mm,
So don't try to build a super carrier right in the beginning,
yeah.
but make sure you get the buy-in from your executive sponsors with a very clear business value proposition.
Wow. Okay. So you made some really bold commitments, which you're now honoring. we'll get to that in a moment, which is incredible, by the way. To roll out a use case every 2 weeks is incredible. So kudos to you. Maybe Sebastian, could you, like, 2 minutes, just practically, if I'm a user of this platform, could you make it visual for our listenership to understand what does that look like? Because we talk platforms and sometimes it feels a bit abstract, but what does it look like if we say we've consolidated data, we've created catalogs, we've democratized data in the organization, which was ultimately your goal. Now, 5 years later, you're rendering value from AI. But what does that look like practically for me as a business user in the organization?
Yeah, so you always have to see it in this shared responsibility model. So at the very bottom, you have like foundational services like networking, security guardrails, monitoring. So just standard services that you would really need in every application, in every data product, which is just completely standardized, and you get it out of the box directly. So you onboard to the platform, you get your AWS account, you get the access to the AWS account, and we say always the account gets bootstrapped. So you basically bootstrap the first account with this basic services that you always
Sebastian, you're getting a bit technical for me here. Make it
Okay.
visual. I open my web browser and I want to procure certain data that Kevin's provided me in the organization. What does that look like
This
for me?
is yes. So that's the second step. So on the one hand, you say yes, you want to have it visually, but at the end, it's always developers that are using the platform.
Mhm.
Kevin said you need to onboard within 48 hours. So you also need to make these platforms developer usable.
Mhm.
So everything is code. You can request things, or also just by a pull request, getting new features. You provide a template, so it's not basically always just the UI. You can always have it in Git, make the pull request, and you get the
Yeah.
stuff that you need or the templates that you need, so that you are developer ready. Because developers don't want to use a front end and click
Sure.
through stuff till they get something. They want to use the tools that they are used to use. For the data perspective, it's a little bit different,
Yeah.
because if you want to use data, you first need to know which data is even available in my organization.
Yeah.
Where can I find the data? How can I access the data? And there, it's really that there's just a unified data catalog now.
Yeah.
So you can search for the data. You get some sample data, so you know how the data is structured, what is in it, what are maybe the compliance regulations for the specific data, and you can make a request to get access to the data. And after you make this request from the platform itself, the data will, over AWS, being shared to your account. So if the data owner is allowing you to use the data for the use cases that you are describing in that request,
Yeah.
then you get the direct data sharing over the platform to your account, and then you can work with the data and implement the use cases.
And I love this, and I wanted to ask you this question because when we talk about platforms, and again, I come back to the fact that you took this decision in 2021, but the commitment you made was to release use cases in 2-week increments, right? But what you're talking about now is really setting that foundation that allows both developers and business users to say, I want to access certain data which is consolidated in the organization, create a copy, derive a new product and service from that through my catalog as an example. And this is how you scale in an organization, right? And I think this is a really important mechanism that would make scale really, really difficult if it's not in place, right? So incredible. I love this story, but I want to talk use cases specifically. So let's move into sales and retail, Kevin. So using this platform, using the mechanisms and the tools that you've now democratized and provided back to the organization, you've now created a number of use cases. Could you sort of walk us through a use case that you're most proud of in this area of sales, that you could sort of visualize or help us visualize?
Yeah, let's maybe use a use case that is pretty easy to
Mhm.
understand, for a third party. So if you talk about sales and customer experience, what you want is the best possible customer experience, which means your sales rep needs as well to be 100% focused on the customer,
Mm.
and he needs to have the time to do so, and he needs to have the resources to get himself prepared to do so. So it's a lot about providing the right information at the right point in time in a format that is easy to understand. It's a lot about abstracting complexity away from the sales rep and of course away from the customer, because the sales rep needs to be able to convey exactly the right level of complexity to allow the customer to make the right choices. And we have great products. We have an amazing product portfolio. And in the European markets, where you are pretty much free to configure them 100% as you like, that means that maybe there is no two identical cars in 1 year.
That's incredible.
But that means as well that there's a lot that the sales rep needs to understand just from the product perspective. And then there's a lot more in the business process perspective, because we have completely different customer types, customer segments, of course. We have different competitive situations in the different markets in Europe. So all of this somehow is reflected in the process landscape, of course. And now you need to abstract all of that away from the sales rep. And in our AI use case approach, we started pretty much with a simple to use interaction element. So it's more or less a chatbot, very simple. But the chatbot is able to answer a lot of questions from a lot of different perspectives. So not only talking about one specific context, but many different contexts. Again, because he is able to access the data from the platform. That gives us a great value here, so to say. Because it's not only that you can ask about a specific vehicle, you can as well ask about a specific request that you may have received from your customer.
As an example, I think in the back office, you said some customers have a sustainability policy that they're deeply interested in making sure that emissions are low. And is this some of the dimensions that come from your customers that you're referring to?
Absolutely. So that is something that may happen. I would say not every, but most of the companies, so traditional fleet customers of ours or corporate accounts, would have their own fleet policy, and all of them would be completely different. Some would be rather price-based, others might be transaction price-based, some might be completely sustainability focused, so based on carbon dioxide emissions, and others might be very much configuration oriented, so that there's, for example, SUVs are allowed only if they have a rim size up to 18 inch, for example. Coupes are not allowed, limousine sedans are allowed. So there's a lot of different parameters that you may have. So the fleet manager that is contacting the sales rep on the Mercedes-Benz side may want support on fulfilling this car policy requirements. So with the chatbot, you can raise certain questions on the complete fleet of the customer, orders of the past, currently being processed orders, and support the fleet manager of the customer of this company with the right information. So you help your customer serving his customer, so to say, in that case. And that's something that is like a second-tier use case, so to say, because it's not only that we provide an answer, but we provide the answer that he can use to answer other questions again.
Yeah, that's an incredible use case. And you skimmed over it, but you said it's almost like there aren't two similar vehicles that come off the production line in a given year at Mercedes-Benz. That's how complicated the variants are across your models. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a sales rep in that position, not having tools and technology to serve my customer. It must be an insane amount of knowledge that you need to retain in order to be in that role. So that's a really, really cool use case. And I know that you have many other use cases that you're unpacking, but let's talk about that's a fantastic one. Let's talk about adoption. And I want to ask this question because I speak to a lot of customers that are doing really good things, good use cases, clear value proposition. But once you're in production, you realize the adoption is maybe lower than you would have thought it would be. And we're starting to learn some of the causes for this. So let's talk adoption, more or less. What's the sort of statistics you're seeing around usage of these use cases, specifically on the AI side?
So we do still see, to be very honest, a pretty low adoption rate in the general AI perspective here, which is predominantly driven, of course, by, on the one hand side, the training requirements that you have, because if you as a sales rep get new information every day, that's wonderful. But on the other hand side, you need to be able to understand how technology is evolving over time. So this 2-week interval that we have on releasing new use cases is really great. But keeping up in training, keeping up in information and communication, is of course a different story here. And that's something that we learn to a certain extent the hard way. That we need to have as well the right communication strategy for AI, yeah, accompanying the speed that we now have in delivery based on AI and for AI. And on the other side, I don't want to call it transformational resistance, but definitely the user go to a more or less 2, 3, or even 4 step transition here or transformation here, because sales used to be still paper based. I would say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe in some dealerships even 2 years ago, pretty much paper based. From the sales rep perspective, not from the overall process perspective, where we've always been very strong in digitization, but from a pure sales rep perspective, making the configuration, but then signing the order on paper, getting customer signature, and then turning it over to his back office, doing the rest of the process in the digital world. Yeah. So this is like somebody who's now jumping from this paper transaction over to, hey, I can do it with AI.
Yeah.
And this is like 2, 3 steps in between that got lost somehow.
Sure.
So you need to overcome this transformational aspect here. And again, training is key, showing the value is key, and making sure you do not overwhelm with complexity. Yeah? Because I've seen a number of different very good ideas. Yeah.
Sure.
But if you do not understand the value of the idea in the first or maybe latest in the second glimpse, you will most probably not be successful in conveying it and making it straightforward for your users.
That's good. That's very interesting. And thank you for being so transparent. I think many customers are on the same journey. They're starting to put those first couple of use cases into production and really seeing low adoption and trying to pivot and figure out what that is. And maybe sort of taking a bit of a 10,000-foot view of Mercedes-Benz as a whole. Like, one thing is training the users around a particular use case and, the messaging around it. And but then we have this, as corporates, this general fluency approach to educating people on AI. What is the view of Mercedes-Benz in terms of supplying tools into the organization and educating people? And maybe the question is like, what's the general ambition and where do you see it going? How integrated is it really? Is there still work to be done, do you think? Just be interested in your view, because I would probably sense that most customers are in the same boat, including ourselves.
I'd say we've taken a lot of very good decisions. Yeah, so I think we were among the first companies who introduced a dedicated AI officer. We were, I think, among the first ones who rolled out Copilot company-wide, which is, I think, very good to increase adoption, to increase AI awareness.
Yeah.
Does it mean you are an AI native enterprise just because you have the structures in place and because you have a very good tool like Copilot in place? No, definitely not. There's a long way to go. Yeah. And we always have this continuous discussion about what's the right balance. Yeah. Let's talk about tools that go way beyond what we know today. Yeah. So Claude is for me the most
we all have Claude, huh?
Yeah. That's the easiest example, yeah. So we are used or trained, at least over the last months, that AI needs context, and based on context it can help you. Claude is at the moment, in particular with Sonnet 4 dot something and Opus, on a level that it creates its context partially itself. So we all know it from our private environment, how good it can be. And now you try to translate it into a corporate environment. What does this mean? Do you want a model where you understand maybe 10 to 15% of its potentials, have access to all your corporate data?
Sure. Yeah, good point.
And this is like where we are discussing back and forth, where we always try to find a balance of being progressive, but at the same time safeguarding our strengths, our competitive advantage. And there's no right or wrong here, I would say. But you need to continuously have such a discussion in your organization, because if you just say, I rolled out Copilot, or hey, in theory, you can use certain Claude models via your model garden or via your Git Copilot, whatever, you're definitely not getting there. You're definitely limiting the potential that you have at the horizon. And I can bet that every second day or sometimes every daily, one of my engineers or architects comes around the corner saying, hey, there's this new tool or there's this new model.
Sure.
Can we have access to it? Can you give us a waiver on that one because corporate policy doesn't allow? So, and of course, the first thing is you think, well, if corporate policy doesn't allow, there must be a reason for that. But on the other hand side, you need to be realistic. Can an organization like ours keep up with the speed that is out there in terms of developing models, in terms of developing new tools based on these models? For sure not.
Yeah.
So you need to be maybe a bit more risk friendly than you've been in the past, still being risk aware. That's very important, in particular if you operate in the European Union with all the legal framework that we have or legal restrictions that we have. Yeah. But you need to overcome that burden, I would say, that organizational burden of the past, that risk protection is the utmost rationale in operations.
Yeah. That's a really fresh and good outlook on that. And you know, we're a risk averse firm as Deloitte as well, right? And we have the same conversations that you do, which is why I love talking to our customers about these things. I think there's this perception sometimes that you're lagging behind because you can't adopt the latest. But I think that balance between having a good risk outlook on, you know, let's protect our clients, our people, our organization, our data, but at the same time try and push ahead to it, you know, adopt what makes sense. And, you know, there's the other side of the coin, which is some of these companies that we want to make use of their technologies and tools have also grown up pretty quickly, right? So, you know, you've been in the market for 100 years plus. It's there's a lot of IP that you need to protect in that as well, and it's a very different world that we live in at the moment. So I think that's also refreshing for some of the listeners to hear, because I met with a CRO of a reputable, highly regulated industry client last week, and he asked me to do something specific, and I said, sure. Do you mind if I take it offline and use, you know, Anthropic Claude Opus 4.7? And his response was absolutely not. You know, I'm a highly regulated environment. It's got to be sovereign, and you know, all of these things come into the mix, and you realize he's just acting in the best interest of his clientele, his data, and this is important. And it's sometimes hard for the engineers to understand, but that balance is healthy, certainly for the moment as well. So thank you for that fresh outlook. Maybe to Sebastian, because I don't want you to sit here too silently while I interrogate Kevin over here. But you know, what does AI look like in terms of your software development life cycle, and even you helping Kevin outwork these use cases every couple of weeks? Like, what does it look like in your day to day in embracing these tools?
So we are very far with engineering for AI. So we are very fast in building use cases and in using AI to generate business value. But on the other hand, you can for sure use AI along the software development lifecycle. So with the agent-based tools you have just said, and there I think there's still a lot to improve, a lot to get better. So you summarized it already quite well. So on the one hand, we want to give the developers as much freedom as possible, but with all the security that's needed and with all the compliance that's needed. And there the progress is slower than maybe for implementing the use cases. But we are aware of that. We are pushing that topic, and we want to use AI along the whole software development lifecycle. So from requirements engineering to generating code, to review code, to monitor the code that has been deployed, to monitor the infrastructure, to build up infrastructure. I mean, you can do it really from the beginning to the end. And we started with that. We are on a good track, but there's still a lot of potential in it to even then not only build use cases that have a business impact, but also to speed up the delivery of all the non-AI use cases and standard software developments that are still ongoing, where we still spend a lot of time doing that. And this, I think, can be sped up a lot with AI for engineering.
Very good, very good. Kevin, in this 5-year trajectory from just good decisions from 2021, maybe one of your biggest challenges that you can think of off the top of your head that you've overcome or you're still working through, but something that's been a real uphill struggle that you think most corporations would be facing?
I think you need to have the courage and the confidence to overcome the initial, I would say, burden or the initial threshold, the initial opposition that you may face when you try to do something that is completely off the standard pattern of the organization. In AI, I believe that this will happen more or less on a daily or weekly basis to all of us, because there is things that are completely unimaginable to us. I always say we understand maybe 10 to 15% of the potentials that are there. And maybe our top engineers, our top architects, our tech leads, our top managers understand maybe up to 60% of what's there. But I would say everybody of us is way far away from 100% understanding of what's possible and what may be possible in the future. So we need to be flexible. We need to be courageous. We need to be ambitious. So we've been down that track 5 years ago when we consciously decided, let's take this investment into one platform. Now, after 5 years, we can say, hey, it was a great investment because it enabled so much in the company. First, all the data use cases, and now all the AI use cases. But of course, 5 years ago, we couldn't know about
Couldn't
that.
know, 100%.
So for sure, and the same is now with the track that we are on with the AI use cases. So there will be some use cases that fail. I'm pretty sure about that. And there will be some use cases that will not have the level of quality that we expect, because we need to learn along the way. That is for sure. But nevertheless, it would be absolutely wrong to say we now slow down or we don't go down that path anymore. We stop our investments. No, exactly the opposite way. Whenever we fail, we rather try harder. We rather invest and make sure we make it better next time. And if so, we might not keep up with every development out there, but we will be very close to what's needed. And we will be at least in a position that we can react. And in some cases, we might even be proactive when it comes to what is happening out there in the market.
I love this. I love your story. I love that you took bold decisions 5 years ago. I mean, one theme that I'm hearing from you is that consolidation of data, breaking down internal silos, democratizing data back to the organization, whether it was 5 years ago because you knew then that you needed data to improve customer service or whatever it may have been, pattern recognition, machine learning, to 5 years down the road, now you're building agents to support, let's call it field workers in a sense, bring the best experience to your customers, and we love your products. I think the common pattern there is data is still key. It has been, it always will be. If anyone is listening today and you're looking to pull the trigger on, should I platform, should I start consolidating? Even if I start in one particular domain of the business and build that out over time, I think the answer reoccurring persistently is yes, absolutely. Be bold, be ambitious, Kevin. So I just thank you for that messaging. Love what you guys are doing. Appreciate your transparency and for being here and taking the time to speak to us today. I trust that you've enjoyed another episode with us on the Generative Edge. And don't forget to generate responsibly.